Stop me if you've heard this one before. Your party is taking a break from their grand fantasy adventure to do everyone's favorite pastime, a shopping episode. You, the DM, have drawn up a bunch of different vendors and merchants for them to visit and peruse and shop at so they can resupply and get ready for the next exciting chapter. While visiting a magic store, they see a valuable piece of armor that could be of use when fighting the evil dragon they're about to slay. The merchant tells them it will be 2,000 gold to purchase this. The party has a collective 500. So you know what they do? They haggle. They do what any party does. They say, hey DM, can I haggle with the merchant? You tell them to roll for persuasion. They roll an 8. And you know what's coming next. Other party members ask if they can roll to haggle. They start to pool together the leftover gear they have and ask if that would supplement their gold. One of the party members tries to steal the armor while the merchant is engaged in all of this conversation. Worst case scenario, they get caught, thrown out, a brawl breaks out, or they have permanently ruined their reputation with this merchant. Best case situation, they still don't get the armor, but we've wasted about 45 minutes talking about it. Now here's the thing, at a healthy Dungeons & Dragons table, this issue can be dealt with pretty quickly. If everybody is agreeing to communicate and talk to one another and have collective fun, then all it would require for the DM is to say, guys, this isn't how I want to spend our time, the merchant isn't going to sell you the armor for less than his stated price, can we move on to something else? And the party would go, yes, of course. But here's the thing, these instances still happen, and they are frustrating, and rarely does anybody walk away all that happy. Players don't like feeling that they are hard-locked out of gear in this game where supposedly anything can happen if you plan and roll accordingly, and the DM doesn't like having their time at the table basically be spent with their players trying to figure out the one situation the DM didn't consider when figuring out how the players couldn't afford this armor. But the more I think about these situations that often arise when the party has downtime and when they go on these shopping adventures, the more I think it's less about the actual material and more about how the party is trying to feel. So let's talk about it a little bit. There's a term thrown around in Dungeons & Dragons quite often called shoot the monk. It serves as a soft reminder to dungeon masters that while you are trying to challenge and think around the powers of your players, you should not be ignoring them. Monks eventually gain the ability to deflect missiles, so in most circumstances, shooting at a monk is an entirely fruitless endeavor on the DM's part, because the monk is just going to deflect it. If a DM was trying to challenge a monk in a physical encounter, it would be a waste of effort to use a bunch of physical projectiles because the monk can so easily deal with them. The problem is, the player with this monk character suddenly finds themselves in a situation where an ability that they have worked towards for several levels is no longer relevant. Rather than getting an opportunity to enjoy a part of their class, it's entirely ignored under the metagame knowledge that monks can deal with this issue. And that's really dissatisfying for players because they're not being allowed to use their toolkit is being used against them. So, Shoot the Monk is a reminder to Dungeon Masters that you are not only responsible for creating challenges to your players, but you're also responsible for creating opportunities for them to show off and feel cool. Now, Shoot the Monk is primarily focused on combat encounters, but the lesson still rings true across most elements of the game. And I think when it comes to player downtime and sessions that involve a lot of shopping or gathering resources, this is a moment where DMs need to be figuratively shooting their monks. One of the reasons why sessions with a lot of downtime or shopping can feel like a drudge is because sometimes they're nobody's priority. Players aren't there to just enjoy the location, they're there to get value out of their gold, and the DM isn't focused on running all these merchants and vendors, they're focused on getting back to their story. But Dungeons & Dragons is still a fantasy. In fact, it's still a power fantasy, so players are likely going to try and get that same level enjoyment out of even the lowest downtime-trodden sessions. And that means using almost anything they can but their gold to try and get results. When downtime is set in this very binary option of in this location, the only thing that will progress your story is a certain amount of coins on your character sheet being given to a certain NPC, it doesn't feel all that fun. Sure, players don't want to spend their gold already, I mean, who wants to spend money? But also it's not all that fun to engage with. Which is why you get instances of players wanting to haggle, of trying to trade, of trying to steal. These are moments to shake it up, to use the toolkits that they have on their character sheets to try and get an alternative end. And that can be frustrating for the DM, because here you are giving the party exactly what they asked for with a certain stipulation that this is how you complete it, and they go, what if I try everything in my power but that? It can make things feel frivolous and time consuming. Here we are using the session that took 3 weeks to plan and 4 weeks of waiting on lesser health potions. So what should we be doing in this situation? We should shoot the monk socially. And what I mean by that is just like how DMs should be creating opportunities for the party to show off their powers and abilities in combat settings, they should be creating opportunities for players to show off other class features in social encounters. And if you give players opportunities to feel fulfilled in their class identity throughout a session with downtime, it can do a lot to make things feel less time-consuming, less cumbersome, and less like the DM and players are fighting over different outcomes. I know shopping sessions hate to see a rogue coming, because if you give a player a +6 to sleight of hand and tell them they can't afford something, what do you think they're gonna do? But what are you gonna do? Tell rogues that they can't use sleight of hand, a skill that the game actively encourages they invest in and part of their class identity is built around? No. You gotta shoot the monk. So, sure, you don't want the player pickpocketing the merchant you made up on the spot because for some reason the players want to buy saddles when they don't own any horses, but maybe you have a pompous noble walking around on the streets. Maybe when you're brainstorming some of your vendors, you do create one that is standoffish and rude and has very prominent iron locks on all of his merchandise. What about for other classes? Well, maybe in one of the shops there's a loudmouth customer that's berating the store owner. Maybe they're much bigger and stronger than the store owner and they're refusing to leave. Man, if only there was a strong barbarian nearby who would like the chance to flex their muscles and maybe earn themselves a discount. What if the local cult was going around collecting its tithe and a merchant was worried they couldn't pay it and keep their business open, and there just so happened to be a cleric nearby that could help in these matters of faith? It can even be stuff as simple as the townspeople being starstruck that there's a paladin walking amongst them, or the warlock is super creepy and so people don't want to haggle as harshly with them. Creating opportunities for players to feel like their character alone could bring about this result is how you make sure sessions of downtime and shopping feel less monotonous and wasteful. Because it actually starts to take into account that there are however many players participating in this section of the story, not however many wallets there are trying to buy up every single health potion in the entire city. And obviously Dungeon Masters aren't the only ones that are responsible for how these sessions play out. Players also need to hold themselves accountable. If you're playing with the DM and not against them, you should be checking in to make sure that they're having fun, that they're enjoying what's going on. Understanding that there are little things called plot hooks and incentives, and maybe they're inviting you to come back when you are stronger and more experienced. And just understanding that no means no, and if you failed the roll and you don't have the gold, then maybe you're not going to get that right here and now. But still, there's a lot of fun that can come from building these moments into sessions that have downtime that don't have a lot of action going on. It can create investment with the town or city that they are traveling through, and it can just straight up make them feel like heroes, adventurers, people with reputation that are to be acknowledged if nothing else. If your game is really focused on your party's economy and you're really worried that they're going to make off with a bunch of supplies that you weren't expecting them to have for a fraction of the cost with giving out all of these discounts, don't be afraid to have the prices be a little bit inflated, and then after they earn these discounts, maybe they go back to how they resemble in the player's handbook. But the point is, don't be afraid to provide your party with opportunities to earn stuff throughout these sessions that doesn't involve gold. Gold is ubiquitous. Everybody in Dungeons & Dragons have gold, but not everybody is a rogue, not everybody is a barbarian, a paladin, a cleric, a warlock, etc. Those are the unique elements that you want to have shine through, that you want to draw attention to and lift up. If your session is feeling stale and boring, look at what your party can do and let them do it. Shoot the monk. And if you're a player, maybe just be aware that your DM is juggling a lot of things, and sometimes that enchanted suit of armor is not their top priority for that session. And as always, talk. If you're having issues with your sessions, if you're having issues at your table, if people aren't having fun, talk it out. This game is entirely communicated through talking. You can talk a little bit more. And I think that's where we'll leave this video. I hope you find any of the points I brought up to be helpful in your game, either as a dungeon master or as a player. Let me know if you guys have any tried and true techniques that you like to use in sessions that have a lot of downtime, or if you have any fun special moves you like to pull out when it comes to shopping, how to make that fun and exciting. Obviously, these are just my musings on it, and I'm very curious to see what works for people and what they like to do in these situations. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below.